Hey guys, I'm Erica Rascon, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about container gardening with herbs. So we're out on my back porch with a couple of the herbs that I have in my garden for the year. This isn't all of them, but these are the ones that I use most often, so I keep them closest to my kitchen. That's one of the first things that I would recommend for anyone who's interested in doing an herb garden. Keep it close to your kitchen. If you have it in a raised garden bed that's, 20 yards from your house, you're actually going to be a lot less likely to use those herbs. The second thing that I want to recommend is to have the essentials, like the herbs that you generally use all the time. So I have parsley, I have cilantro, but then I also have herbs that I don't use as often, like sage or this type of Thai basil. It's important to add a little bit of variety because it gives you something to experiment with. And when we can experiment with new flavors, we're a lot less likely to use salt as our go-to in our food preparation. I use salt, don't get me wrong, but having like a little bit of diversity tends to help. All herbs are going to require pretty much a different type of watering schedule. It depends on the type of herb that you're using as well as the container that it's in. I've drilled holes in the bottom of all of them. So they're watered. When the plants are watered, any excess water can seep down and out and it doesn't puddle at the basin of the container. That helps with air circulation through the soil. It also prevents your plants from getting wet feet, which is when the roots sort of sit in water that's sedentary, and that can cause some problems with your plant. I'm gonna grab the camera really quick and give you a little close-up of what's happening with plants that are well watered as well as those that need a little extra love. So these are mint plants, or two mint plants that have grown and sort of come back over the years. You can see that the soil here is still fairly damp. So today I skipped the watering because the soil already has its own moisture. There's no need to add more moisture to it. You can also see that the leaves are rather perky and stiff. That's another thing that you want to look for just to make sure that your herbs are getting enough water. Same thing over here with my Thai basil and sweet basil. You'll notice that the leaves are nice and firm. They have a good color to them. And again, the soil is a little damp, but it's not wet. There's no standing water. Now I'm going to take you over to a plant that is showing some signs of dehydration. Now, I kind of did this on purpose and I feel bad for this poor guy, but he's pretty hardy. This particular plant is showing signs that it's going to need water soon. The leaves are a little limp, they've become pale in color, and if you look down at the soil, it's obviously dry and a little bit flaky. Now, why did that happen if I've been watering these all the same way? Take a look at the pot that it's in. This is just the one that I grabbed from the store really quick. It's small, it has the tiny holes at the bottom, but it's mostly made out of peat moss, and so the water doesn't retain as well as if I were to use the nice garden soil that I've made out of my own compost and organic material here. So you can even see the difference between like the soil that sort of got wet under the container and the soil that's actually in the container. So the container that you have matters, the type of soil matters. But if you're, not into soil and all that just yet, just look at the leaves on the plant. They're gonna tell you, help me, I need water. And these are the signs to look for. So I'm gonna water that little guy and stop using him as a demonstration subject. Now, a sign that you might be getting too much water or not enough sun would be yellowing on your leaves. So this is a chamomile plant that I recently got. As you can tell, it's still inside of its little pot from the store. This one has been getting more water than it needs. It's starting to turn a little yellow. Leaves can tell you a lot about what's going on in your herb garden. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about harvesting. There are two types of harvesting that you're likely to do. There's the daily harvesting that you have throughout the season where you're just getting the bits of leaves or stems that you need for your food. And then there's the end of season harvest. Let's talk about end of season harvest first just to get that out of the way. So at the end of your plant season, for many of us that'll be going into fall or winter, you want to look at what you have going on in your herb garden. And any plant that's an annual, go ahead and harvest as much of the good usable material as you possibly can. You can take that inside of your house, you can hang it upside down to help dehydrate it, or if you have a dehydrator, you could just put it in there. Herbs that do really well with drying would be parsley, oregano, sage is really good. Cilantro, not so much. I just don't do that quite often. and also basil and bay leaves if you have those too. Rosemary does fantastic. And even for plants that aren't annuals, the perennial ones that will come back, like the rosemary or the sage, go ahead and get the usable material off of that too, because most of the times they sort of die or overwinter, and you won't get much use out of them in the fall and the winter unless you live in like Florida or something like that. So that will take care of your seasonal harvesting. On the day-to-day basis, only get what you need. But I also recommend pruning all of your plants regularly. So let's talk about the Thai basil. That's one that I don't use every single day. I probably don't even use it every week. But I'll still go through and prune off a few leaves because regular pruning will encourage growth. So let's take a look at how to prune some of the most common herbs. Whether you're pruning just for maintenance or you are harvesting for use, you want to go ahead and find some of the largest leaves first. Those large leaves are going to be the oldest leaves, and you'll want to get rid of those first. So on the basil plant, you can see this leaf in the very back. It's huge. So this is going to be one of the ones that I use sooner than later. You can pinch the leaf off just by creating a little like pair of scissors with your thumbnail and your finger. You want to get pretty close to the stem. Or you can use a pair of fine-tipped shears like these, and that'll help you be a little bit more selective and make a cleaner cut. So I'm gonna take this leaf here that's also kind of large and just snip pretty close to the stem. And then you also want to find any leaves that are showing signs of damage and maybe get rid of those. So first thing I do is find any damaged leaves, like this little guy. He's got some yellow spots. First, look and see if the damage is a sign of a nutrient deficiency or a water deficiency. If it is, go ahead and address that problem. Also, you can remove it. So address the problem if there is one. You can snip it with your shears or just pluck it off with your thumb. And then that way you're getting rid of any damaged material from your garden. So while you're pruning your herbs, you want to look out for just the natural sort of shedding that plants do. Sometimes that's due to being overwatered or just stems that are old. So you see down here, there's like the light yellow and light green leaves and stems. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. That's going to open up some space around the bottom of the plant and also encourage the best growing foliage here up at the top to receive most of the water and nutrients and just kind of get the old matter out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and snip those bottom stems. Kind of hard to do this with like one hand and a camera, but you kind of get the gist. Get some of those out of the way. And then I'm going to go ahead and clear out the debris and just get rid of that. And that's it. Some plants will require a complete cutback. Those are the woodier herbs. So you want to think about your rosemary, your sage that's mature. The sage that I have is pretty young, but any mature sage plants, and thyme as well, I think. So anything that has like a woody stalk, you'll want to cut that back completely. So I'll go ahead and show you an example. Okay, so here we are with the rosemary bush in my front yard. This rosemary bush has been here for God knows how many years. When we moved into the house, it was already here and it was already huge. One thing that I learned is that it requires being cut back at the end of every growing season. If you don't cut it back, it gets really tough, thick stems, and then it stops producing the nice leaves that you're able to eat. So I'll show you what that looks like up close. This is the bush. It is massive. I would say that's about 3 or 4 feet wide. And then when you get down into it, you can see where it's turned almost into like a tree. It's very thick, very woody. None of this is edible at this point. All of this is just stem that can't be eaten. And that's because the previous owners weren't cutting it back regularly. Now you see that there's areas here at the top that are growing nice and green. These green areas are going to start blooming soon. They have really beautiful purple flowers, just a side note. But then they also have the leaves that you can eat down here. So at the end of the season, what I'll do is go through this bush and cut back towards the area that the green leaves start. So like on this plant or this little part of the plant, I'll cut back to here. And then all along this area will get cut back. That'll help to promote growth in the new season and keep the rest of the plant from turning into a giant bush that is inedible. Pretty straightforward. I encourage you to take up herb gardening because it's a really great place to start. Herbs are pretty low maintenance, they have relatively few pests, and they add so much flavor and diversity to your meals it can make any day seem pretty exciting. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a note in the comment section. Bye.